So who is your favourite judge? Is it Judy? Is it Rinda? Or is it Reinhold? Well, none of them are in this. I'll tell you who is. Sylvester Stallone, him off of the Rocky. I am the law. Judge Dredd was a 1995 movie based on the titular character from the British Beano for Edgy Boys comic known as 2000 AD. 2000 AD? I bet in 1977 when that first came out, they must have thought it seemed really futuristic and far away. Well, it wasn't, was it, you idiots? It was only like 23 years or something. God damn it, you bloody fools. Still going though. Judge Joseph Dredd first put on his jackboots and fascistically walked around, but in a heroic way, in the post-apocalyptic dystopian streets of Megacity 1 in the second issue of 2000 AD, and swiftly became the comic's most popular and enduring character. Dredd was part of a law You know what, instead of me wittering on, why don't you just read this intro from the game? I mean, you're here to watch the game anyway. I'll go and make a glass of squash or something. Do you want anything? Ribena? No, I'm not making a tea. I don't want to make a tea. People are too specific regarding tea, and if you make it slightly not to their specifications, they get all moody. Do you know what? Most Americans don't even have a kettle. Isn't that? Oh, it's done. Looks like I'm not going to get my squash. So that little tech spiel is ultimately the synopsis to Judge Dredd boiled down, and it is that tale that caught Buena Vista's eye enough for them to go and buy the rights to make a ruddy film of. After considering old Arnie, Sylvester Stallone was eventually cast to play the moody jawline of Judge Dredd, and he was accompanied by Diane Lane, Max von Sydow, a scenery-chewing performance from arch-villain and wronged genetic twin Armand Assante, and goofball Rob Schneider in the annoying comedy sidekick role that was an absolute requirement in most late 20th century action movie guff. The movie centres around Dredd trying to clear his name after being falsely convicted of a crime and exiled to the ruined wilds outside the city. Judge Dredd was lambasted by the critics and fans of the comic alike. Director Danny Cannon was said to be utterly disheartened when his violent R-rated movie was hacked to bits to first get an NC-17 rating and then again by Buena Vista to get the teen money-making rating of the PG-13. They butchered all the butchering, so they did. They did all this so that kids could sit and kick you in the back of your chair and chat and giggle throughout the whole movie just because they're trying to impress the members of the opposite sex that they brought with them. You're too young to indulge in carnal pleasures, you dickheads. You wouldn't even know what to do, and I'm trying to watch this subpar futuristic action movie, so shut up and bog off. Another criticism came from the amount of times Dredd removes his helmet in the movie, a thing he absolutely never did in his 18-year comic book existence before this movie came out. Stallone does it here constantly, probably due to studio interference, because why hire a bankable big-name star if you're not going to have their face all over the movie? Having a look at the Rotten Tomatoes aggregate score, we're right in the 20s here, from over 50 reviewers. Dredd was seen as a flop with a poor US domestic box office and a slightly better international ticket sale, nudging it just about into a feeble $113.5 million return from a $90 million budget. That sounds a lot, doesn't it, $23 million? Well, it's not. I mean, I'd like it, but apparently that's bad for a film of this nature. As you're probably no doubt aware, there was a better interpretation of Dredd that came out in 2012 starring Carl Urban. However, you probably didn't go and see it, so no one's going to make a sequel of it, and that means, ironically, there's no justice. Judge Dredd, the video game, was published the same year as the movie by Acclaim on the PC, the Megadrive, the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy and the Game Gear. All the games played in a very similar manner, although hardware limitations obviously apply in some instances, seeing a stripped down version of the game, particularly on the handhelds. The development team behind the scenes were Probe Software, the former 8-bit 8-bit computer technical marvels who regularly teamed up with Acclaim to great effect on the 16 bits with titles like Alien 3 and to absolutely miserable effect with Batman Forever. The good news in this instance is that Judge Dredd is a very similar game to Alien 3 in terms of its feel and its engine, because no one wants to deal with the abject lunacy that is that Batman Forever game with its terrible control scheme and platformer crossed with Mortal Kombat Chimera that was absolutely abysmal. The multiple directional ladder packed run and shooter loosely follows the movie's plot, but also adds, at the end of the game, a terrifyingly grim extra-dimensional menace in the form of the Dark Judges. This will no doubt give poor old Sylvester a torrid old time, poor love. Of the 12 levels in the game, 7 of them are digitised replicas of the movie sets, with the remaining 5 taking their inspiration from the comics. In each stage, Dredd is given objectives that mainly involve blowing things up, arresting or killing folk, which is exactly the sort of procedural police work that you'd want from a Judge Dredd licence. There's a range of bullets that can be loaded into Dredd's iconic Lawgiver gun, a handheld revolver of many talents. Well, shooting mainly. The perps of Mega City 1 need to be careful not to end the day on the explodey end of one of Dredd's many bullets, ranging from heat seekers, incendiary bullets and ricochet bullets that bounce around like billy-o and can even do damage to your big old lunkhead. Failing that, you can just do enough damage to a wrongdoer to ensure that they acquiesce to their severe punishment, and they get bundled off onto a little disc and sent to prison. A relief, I'm sure, for all the grannies around Mega City 1 who don't want their handbags snatched. While most wrongdoers will acquiesce, the odd fella seems to have an unusual gait about them, and this is because they're one of the 4 Dark Judges who've taken up residence in their body, pushing the poor fella's soul out. Once vaporised, the tormented gent will be free to die on the ground, while the Dark Judge's demonic form escapes to find another host. These ghastly possessions can be temporarily stopped with the correct bullet from our good friend Joseph Dredd. Dredd, despite his heavy armour, is an agile chap indeed, and he can scurry up ladders, vault great distances and swing like a big old gibbon across overhangs. Animation is fairly smooth and the control is pretty fluid. It's almost certainly using the same engine as Alien 3, which in itself was one of the very best Western produced platformers on the 16-bit consoles. Is Judge Dredd as good as 1993's Alien 3? I'm not sure on that at all. There's a bit more to it, certainly in terms of what's actually happening in the game. There's obviously a bit more variety in the backgrounds and the enemies, which should be obvious given the fact that that game was all prison walls and phallic-headed xenomorphs. It's just that Judge Dredd isn't as fun. There's some very difficult boss encounters, an uneven and taxing difficulty, some very of the era annoying platforming sections involving floating platforms, and ultimately it's just not quite as strong as its stablemate. With that said, it's still a pretty good game, and if you like that game, you'll probably like this too, maybe just not as much. The 8-bit handheld versions are surprisingly strong too, with the Game Gear version probably the better of the two, though the Super Nintendo has the slight edge on the Megadrive one, meaning it's pretty even Stevens there between Nintendo and Sega. There's me sitting on the fence again. CMVG had a lot of time for old Judge Dredd. They said that it's a pretty ace game, atmospheric, challenging and even a wee bit original. It should keep most people happy, even if the action does lag at some points. They gave the Super Nintendo game an 88 and the Mega Drive one an 86. Mean Machines gave the Mega Drive version an 80% and said Dredd is very playable and a big old platformer to boot. More originality would be nice. Bit of disagreement in EMAP Towers there then. GameFan went with a 79 for the Super Nintendo and put it that if solid gameplay is your priority, this is your game. But if you're looking to be dazzled, try before you buy. So that's Judge Dredd then. You might like it, you might hate it, but I'm not going to judge you. There's a joke there. It's a lot better though than the unreleased Midway arcade game. Man, that game looked terrible. Look, some woman's taking Goro for a walk like he's a dog. Less I am the law than I am appalling. Like, subscribe, and K thanks, bye.